Both candidates vying to become the next governor of New Jersey head into the final weeks of the race after wrapping up the second and final debate last night. Republican challenger Jack Ciattarelli is trying to unseat incumbent Democratic Governor Phil Murphy. In Tuesday's debate, they disagreed on a number of topics, including mask mandates. The governor responded to an apparent accusation of hypocrisy over masks.
I have to answer this thing about masking. Are you wearing a mask right now? Are you wearing a mask? No, we're on stage. I've done 227 COVID updates. I wear the mask on stage as I did tonight, take it off, speak, and put it on when I leave. And it's quite clear what the playbook is. Vaccinations and masking, whether it's in school or generally, that is the playbook.
In all fairness, David, what am I missing here? The CDC recommends that masks be worn for large indoor gatherings. He was at a large indoor gathering in the last 3 to 4 days. It was reported in the press today, and nobody had masks on.
Nice try.
Joining me now to discuss this race is CBS News political reporter Adam Brewster. Hi, Adam. So the pandemic remains a top concern in this election. How did the candidates' plans differ on controlling the virus and the economic recovery for New Jersey?
Yeah, this race will be interesting, Tanya, in the sense that this is the first incumbent governor, Phil Murphy, facing a direct opponent and sort of a referendum on how voters think he has handled the pandemic. Certainly you had the recall in California where the pandemic was the overarching issue in terms of Governor Gavin Newsom's handling of it. But it was him against a whole field of candidates, not so much one-on-one race. And down in Virginia, there's not an incumbent governor on the ballot down there. So this New Jersey race, presents an interesting test heading into next year where many of these governors, red states and blue states, will face a similar test. And this is sort of an issue where Phil Murphy appears to be strong with voters. A Monmouth poll from late September showed 50% of voters trusted Phil Murphy on the issue of handling the pandemic, and about a quarter said they trusted Jack Ciattarelli on how he would handle the pandemic. And you've heard Governor Murphy lean into this. He has, said that, you heard him in that clip, he's repeated that line elsewhere in the debate. This has been a tragedy, but there's a playbook to get out of this. It's masks, it's vaccines. And, there is a light at the end of this tunnel unless you want to become Texas and Florida. Again, that's sort of similar messaging that we saw in California during the recall election. And Mr. Ciattarelli has said he is vaccinated. He encourages New Jerseyans, who are eligible to get vaccinated, promotes the science. But he has said that he believes that mandates harden opposition and are not a productive way to get those who have not yet been vaccinated to put shots in their arms.
Interesting. Okay, so abortion has also emerged as a hot topic. As some states are trying to enact more restrictions. Republican candidate Jack Ciattarelli said or told the audience what he would do as governor. Let's listen.
I do not believe that Roe v. Wade is going to be overturned. I do not. I believe the Supreme Court will observe the legal principle known as stare decisis in landmark decisions. If it is, we will codify it here in New Jersey. I support a woman's right to choose.
Adam, what does this tell you about New Jersey that even the Republican candidate for governor, is clear about where he stands on abortion? Is that just a factor considering the state he's running in?
Well, he has been very clear about the fact that he supports a woman's right to choose. It is different than what you're used to hearing from Republican candidates around the country. But you're right, Tanya. It does speak to the politics in New Jersey there is a Republican gubernatorial nominee who holds that position. It is a state where Democrats hold about a million person advantage in terms of voter registration. So having more moderate positions like that certainly, improves a Republican's chances. It is still an area where there's some distinction between them. Ciattarelli says that he would, cut off abortions after 20 weeks and going forward. And the Murphy campaign and Governor Murphy have said, that is a distinguishing point between them. They do not want to be as restrictive. They've pointed to funding issues over Planned Parenthood. So the Murphy campaign has still tried to use that as sort of an issue to distinguish themselves, but it is not as clear cut as typically you see between Democrats and Republicans on the issue of abortion, with Mr. Ciattarelli saying if Roe versus Wade is overturned, which he believes it will not be, that he would work to codify women's access to an abortion.
And how did Governor Murphy defend his record, and what issues did he struggle to answer in the debate?
He has certainly pointed to how he has handled the pandemic, how the economy has started to come back here. Certainly Mr. Ciattarelli, has hit Murphy on, things like small businesses that have closed and the nursing home issue that happened in the early part of the COVID pandemic here. Governor Murphy was asked about his plans for climate change and how he plans to pay for it. He didn't give tons of details about that plan, but he has, presented this essentially as a choice, Governor Murphy, of do you want to keep going forward? Do you like what we've done on things like marijuana legalization, expanding access to voting, some of the improved funding for schools around the state? That's the direction that, if you want to keep going in that direction, then I'm your candidate. Ciattarelli has kind of said, if you do not think you are better off 4 years ago than you are today, let's make a change and let's put me into office, and I will, move things in a different direction.
And Adam, First Lady Jill Biden is expected to campaign for Governor Murphy on Friday. Former President Trump has also been mentioned a number of times on the campaign trail and in last night's debate. So how are national politics playing a role in this election?
Well, we've seen the president and vice president in New Jersey in recent weeks. Of course, after Hurricane Ida, President Biden came to visit New Jersey, and then Vice President Harris was here last week talking about things like vaccines and child care funding. And while it was an official White House visit, I'd note that you can probably talk about those issues in any state that you would like to. It's probably no accident that she ended up in a state where there's a gubernatorial election this year. And then you, of course, have First Lady Jill Biden here this week. We'll see if other big-name Democrats come to New Jersey between now and Election Day, like we're seeing down in Virginia in Terry McAuliffe's race against Glenn Youngkin. As far as Jack Ciattarelli, he was asked last night if he wants President Trump to come campaign for him. And he said that's not really his style. He doesn't like other people to come campaign for him. He wants to run his own race. And when he was kind of pressed, so is that a no? He said, I'll win this election on my own. Of course, President Trump lost New Jersey by 16 points here. And that's kind of been a fine line to walk for Jack Ciattarelli. Had to make it through the primary, made it through, fairly easily in a primary against some, more staunch pro-Trump candidates more closely aligned with the politics of the former president. But he has to, he knows that he has to walk that line and sort of keep that part of the party engaged, as well as peel some people off from the middle. It is a tricky line to walk for Republicans in a state like New Jersey.
Adam Brewster, thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Tanya.